Okay, I'll get started now. I know people are still coming in, but we'll get started. We'll always run out of time, so I don't know what it is. Welcome to the LA County Office of Education CalPADS Network for April 14th, 2026. If you don't mind, just rename yourself in case you have a question. We'd like to do a follow-up after the fact with any questions we're not able to answer. I'm looking for Sean Walker, who's going to join us from CDE, because she's always good. If I can't answer it, I'm sure that she can. But anyway, just in case, if you have a question we aren't able to answer, please go ahead and change your name to include your LEA so we know where you're from. If you have any questions, we're a pretty small group. Use the chat generally, but if you need to come off mute for any reason, you can go ahead and do that. I think we're small enough. It shouldn't be too much of an imposition. And let's see, if we do send out the follow-up email, if you do need to unmute, yeah, we do ask you first raise your hand to make sure we get that. And also we're recording as noted, so we will upload that. Usually we send it out within like 48 hours, just so you have it. I am Evan Bartelheim. I am the project director for accountability and data literacy here at LACOE. I'm joined by my team, Dr. Weissman, Karina Nahara, Roy Lung, and Jeremy Vinluen. So Sean Walker, I don't think has joined us yet, but hopefully she'll be joining us any minute now. She's the Educational Data Management Division's, what is her title? Oh, I can't remember now. Data analyst maybe. But she will be joining us. She was just in person. We just had an in-person training with CSIS. I know a lot of you weren't necessarily interested. It was the data governance, but it was great to have Sean there. And a lot of you who did join us, it was great to see you in person, but I'm going to share some of that information too when we get into the meeting. But just in the chat, it's spring. Kind of felt like summer there for a while. Now I'm back to it's feeling like spring. So in the chat, if you don't mind, what's something you're planting now or you planted earlier this year that you're hoping pays off later this year? It could be CalPADS. It could be literally tomatoes. I don't know. But go ahead and drop that in the chat. Let's see what you've planted so far this year. I don't know. What did I plant this year? Planted some flowers recently. I never do well with, for some reason, all our vegetables die. I have one raised bed. And just, I don't know, not very, don't have a green thumb. So flowers seem kind of like a no-brainer. But what did you plant, Angela? Yeah, wildflower seeds. That's exactly what I did. It's fun to watch them sprout. Sabra, tomatoes and cucumbers. See, that's what I tried last year, and I just got nowhere. And yes, the birds got to them as well. Oh, Gloria, avocado trees. That is amazing. Our neighbor has avocado trees, and when they're blooming, it's amazing. Sean just let me know she'll be here shortly. Marie with the grapes. Wow, that's impressive. I'm not that ambitious, I guess. Sue Ann, yes, the snails. Now that I can relate to. Yeah, there you go, David. Yeah, you're like me. Let's go with the flowers. Then you have that last minute, got guests coming over, and you can throw some of your own flowers into a vase, and cool. Well, and hopefully, you're planning some stuff now because for our CalPADS end of year. But we'll talk about that and some of the takeaways we got from our data governance. I think there's some good stuff there, and I wanted to make sure I shared that with you, even if you didn't join us. So for today's agenda, we're going to go over some just essential system access and security information, which I'm sure you're probably on. Then we have some immediate spring priorities that are probably, hopefully, in your on your radar already. Maybe they're not even your responsibility. That would be great for you. And then we'll shift gears, and we just want to touch base on some end of year 1 and 2 important topics. End of year is really where your dashboard outcomes come from. So you want to be on top of these things. And then, like I said, I want to talk a little bit about some data governance concepts and some resources that we have there, because that's really ultimately our goal here, is to give you the cleanest data you have and to ensure that everybody who needs to be looking at the data is looking at the data. And then next steps. And then we do have our vendor breakout. I think we're joined by a couple of our vendors, a couple who might. Jan is here already from Aries. It's always nice to see you, Jan. Suhan. I'm looking at Jaime, who used to work here with us. He's severely allergic to the agave plant in his backyard. That is a tough go. That is really ironic, isn't it, Jaime? Because wouldn't you be able to put agave on you to address anything? And man, okay, sorry, Jaime, that's bad. All right, so let me just shift over to our Canvas page. I think we've already dropped it in the chat, but just so you know, put a lot of stuff up there. There's sometimes I'm like, I forget whether or not I've linked everything. So let me just go over there real quick to share what we've got. So here's our agenda for today. I did manage to get the slides up like 2 minutes before we started. The link for the vendor sessions that follow is linked already. We'll put the session recording up, and I'm already going to point it out because we want to make sure you fill out the feedback form. We have the link here, and we have a slide for it later, but make sure you fill that out. Then I just included a number of the links that we're going to be talking about. They're also included on the slides themselves. All right, and we have some resources, additional resources, including links to the live training. And then we also, this is where I always forget. So I put a bunch of stuff in the modules section. And so if you're not seeing it there on the agenda page, make sure you look here too. So there's a couple things that we have here. I like, for instance, I put up, I don't know if anybody attended, but the end of year primer that CSIS did the other day. I think it's a great resource to share, primarily for people who aren't your CALPADS technicians, or if you're brand new, but this would be great to share with people. And there's a link to it. We'll talk about it when we get there. The recording of it, I found it really helpful, but this is some of the stuff that I also probably didn't include. And then I have the data governance sheet on there, which I don't think I linked on the agenda. Anyway, so there you go. Take a look at that stuff and you will be up to date. So our goals for today are hopefully we're going to equip you as the CalPads coordinators, if that's your role, but also the non-technical staff. That's kind of where I feel like our wheelhouse is, because I'm no longer a CalPads LEA coordinator. Just I had that background, so I spent a lot of time attending meetings, but I'm not like regularly signing off on CalPads stuff. And I even though I attend the trainings and go to the CSIS Wednesday Q&A, I feel like woefully ignorant. So, I lean into your expertise pretty regularly. But I do think the non-technical staff, which is what I relate to, is what I try to focus on. So we want to share the best practices for ensuring your data accuracy through the spring and during the end of year windows. And then also just that additional focus for the short term is that system security. They transition the time-sensitive information about reclassification that just came out in a flash, and then the Sunbucks collection. And then I have a couple tools I shared. Usually I lean in my good friend at Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, the county office there. Rebecca Aguilar always has good stuff. Her meetings right now too. So I'm like, I'll post stuff afterwards. She always has great resources that she shares, but I do have something from our friends at Shasta County that I think is pretty cool that I'll share later. Our themes for today, stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? There's a lot of things now that you can start doing right now, and that'll help you save you some time in the end. And also build your data coalition. So who are your data stewards? Who are your data owners? Those are the people you want to have involved, because especially at the end of the year, when now that we have so much more information we're collecting, and we know a lot of people are already off for the summer, when you need to have them look at the data, try to get them ready to start looking earlier rather than later. So first of all, let me launch a real poll. So this is the system access and security transition, which is the transition to this multi-factor authorization, the migration that's taking place. So this is a hard deadline. So all your users have to migrate to the new authentication system by May 1st, right? And actually, I'm bad. I haven't set mine up yet. I'm not the LEA CASP coordinator here, so I think I'm allowed to drag my feet, but I do need to get over. And so Leonid, our guy, is probably going to say, hey, are you going to get online? If you don't migrate, then you're going to have loss of access, right? So and your LEA administrator is going to have to let you in. Now that may not be a big deal, but if you're LA Unified, that might be a bigger deal. So and then the best practice is for the LEA administrators to use the user management screen to track that staff that have obtained their new CalPADS username. So hopefully, your numbers are reasonable. And it is the individual responsibility. The sharing credentials does violate the FERPA and system auditability. So they've made that note before that you can't have a shared, like a generic SPED at calpads.org for your district. So everybody has to have their own. All this is laid out in CalPADS Flash 319, excuse me. And I just had a quick poll because I'm just curious where people are. Hold on one sec. Let's just see. So, but those of you, where are you in terms of your system readiness? Have you, if everybody's migrated, if it's in progress? I'm just curious. You have time, obviously, through the rest of this month, but let's see where people are. And if you're not the CalPADS coordinator, like me, it's a nice place to be. No stress. All right. Well, I'll end it and let's just show you what we got here. So yeah, it looks like most people are in progress. So that's probably pretty typical. And then if this one person is not started yet, so maybe you're a very small LEA, but definitely want to do it. And then a handful, quarter of you've already got everybody migrated. Well done. I am envious. Like I said, I'm the black sheep. I have not migrated over, so I need to do that. I'm going to do it as soon as we close out today. How's that for my commitment? All right. So let's see. Moving on. Okay, so this is another immediate priority, right? So EL reclassification. Flash 322 came out a few weeks ago. It's actually a reiteration of some information, multiple iterations, I think, that have come out over the years, but it is important. And because I work with our assessment unit, we have our DAN meetings. This is something I want to make sure everybody's kind of focused on. So if you have any students, and there were a lot, I think statewide there are like more than 6,000 our last count. Students who had received a 4 on the 2024 summative LPAC. So that would have entitled them they would have met one criteria for reclassification. So I think the state's always wondering, are these students going to be reclassified? So just know you could still reclassify based on the prior year's results, right? Maybe you're waiting for additional details. Maybe there was, there's 4 criteria. So maybe you're waiting for teacher input to change them. But they can't be used for reclassification after May 31st. So they have to, you have to get them, you'd have to test otherwise. So if you are going to reclassify students, you need to get their RFEP statuses updated by May 15th to ensure that they hit TOMS, the Test Operation Management System, by May 31st. And therefore, those students would be exempted from testing. Otherwise, those students would be counted against the participation rate for the LP. Make sure that that's in place, right? So, and if you do reclassify, I'm going to talk about the reclassification process. This is probably not an issue for you if you're reclassifying in the middle of while school's still in session. It's more of an issue when you reclassify after, but you have to have at least the reclassification, the ELAS has to have changed at least one day after, right? So the students would have to have been an EL and then subsequently an RFEP on 2 distinct days in order to be counted for your reclassification rate, right? So when the end of year rolls around and the CDE is actually updating the reclassification rates, right? So make sure you have that information squared away. And I just wanted to go over these. The next slide has the scenarios. I always think these are kind of compelling, right? So and it does come up. So you had these scenarios that were in the Flash as well. All right, so scenario 1 is if you're reclassifying those students right now, right? So if you have a student who is being reclassified while during the school year, that's kind of not a big deal. You just give them the last date assigned, right? But for any students that you may determine will be reclassified, maybe you're going to administer the 25-26 and they get a 4 on that. You're getting your results back much earlier now for the LPAC, and so you may reclassify. But oftentimes, depending on the end, when your school year ends, you may be reclassifying those students after the end of the school year. And people often wonder what to do. And I've had actually people say, "Oh, our CalPADS person told me we can't reclassify them after the school year ends," and that's not accurate, right? So take a look, make sure you take a look at these things, right? So for the most part, you want to be able to capture those students, and you can capture those students for your own reclassification numbers, provided they haven't enrolled in another school. So if they're reclassified after July 1st, but they haven't enrolled in another school, you can still give them the ELAS change date to RFEP within the school year. You can have that last dated signature would be when the student was enrolled in the prior school year. So you can still capture them up until they've enrolled in another school. Sean, do you have anything to add to that? I know Sean joined us.
No, it's great. Thank you
Okay.
for making sure to cover it all.
I'm going to put you right on the spot, right? So, but yeah, I think this is one that comes up because everybody wants to capture those students that they did all the hard work to get ready for reclassification. And then, if you're, a K-8 district and they're leaving for ninth grade, you want to capture them before they go. So those are the rules. And the other thing that's coming up is the Sunbucks. And I will tell you, that's kind of crazy how much the Sunbucks, the rules are out there, right? So it just opened April 1st, right? So the initial deadline, though, to submit those universal benefits application forms, and also any National School Lunch Program forms that you may have had students fill out if they weren't direct certified, is by April 30th at 5 p.m. Now, you don't have to, as you probably know, you don't have to worry about those students who are categorically approved, the direct certification students. So you don't have to worry about your homeless, foster, migrant students, because they're automatically identified in CalPADS. But you may have local matches too. I don't know of any LEAs that I've talked to who are doing local match, but you may do some local matching if they're not in your direct cert from the county. So, but just remember that the address to which the students are mailed the EBT card goes to whatever address is on file in CalPADS. So if they're missing, it's going to be sent to the district, and then you're going to have to track the students down. There's a lot of resources out there. I highly recommend watching the Sunbucks webinar. It's just an hour. You can kind of skim through it, or maybe not you. Make sure that the folks who need to know this, to need to support you, your nutrition program folks can take a look at that. But Flash 321 is pretty comprehensive. But then you've also got the CDE's Sunbucks page, the Sunbucks webinar with Paulo Mishima taking a somewhat starring role. So that's a good one to watch. And then if you need any information about the education data collection system, which we'll talk about, has some other components to it that we're collecting this year, check out Flash 323, which just came out, but I do have it linked. That's one of those flashes. If you didn't get it in your email, I added that to our Canvas page as well. Just a few additional details. So there is that 3% rule. You have to hold back and verify 3% of all your approved UBAs that are received by April 1st. That's excluding last summer. So anything that you collected last summer, they don't have to be included in that 3%. However, and hopefully you'll maybe already got this done, you did have to resend the records for the students that were eligible last summer. Those students who were eligible between July 1 and September 2nd of 2025. It was just the cleanest way for them to do it. So those were kind of an additional, you had to re-upload those students. But they added a little feature with the append logic, which now allows you to do, instead of the full upload, the override. It should make you you don't have to do the full replacement files this year. So hopefully that makes things a little bit easier, because you're only needing to upload the new students and subsequent files. Sean, I just kind of skimmed over that. Did I overlook anything?
No, you absolutely captured everything. Most importantly, the 3%, especially for those EBA applications that you already received and you're holding them over. Just make sure that those are incorporated within your 3%.
All right. So, and I don't even know necessarily that you're responsible, but I do know that if you are The LEA CalPADS coordinator, you're the one who has the keys to the kingdom, right? You can assign other folks to the EDCS yourself. So you may, and we may talk about that as relates to the ASVAB and the State Seal of Civic Engagement later. Those are other data collections, but you shouldn't be responsible for all these. But I know you end up, because you have data in your title probably, that you end up doing a lot of this, doing a lot of these uploads. So all right, so let's get into end of year. Just a quick stop. The end of year, it's the largest collection, right? So it covers all the program eligibility, the student incidents, cumulative enrollment, the special ed data. The window is going to be opening May 5th, right? So it's coming up, gosh, not too long from now. The initial certification is at July 17th, right? And you don't have to have yourself approved at that date, but you should if possible, right? So and that's important to know. So this is EOY1. Among the things that you're going to be collecting here, in addition to the program eligibility, homeless counts, your RFEP data, which we just talked about, the significance of making sure your reclassified students get counted, your behavioral incidents, restraint, seclusion, student absence summary. So that's big, and there's some new pieces to that we'll talk about in a minute. And the new end of year does not include your one-year graduates or your completers. That's going to be end of year 2. We'll talk about that as well. And then the new data collections for attendance recovery, so that are made by the STAS file, the expanded learning programs that are loaded using the LEA program file, the LEAP file. We'll talk about that in a second. And any of those students, the students with disabilities, the survey data that you collect. So there's so much that goes in. And just a reminder, this is all the information that really, a lot of it is used to populate the dashboard, and it's critical that it's accurate. So first, let's talk about a little bit about your special programs, or your support programs, and your special populations, right? So this includes all your program eligibility feature, your homeless counts, your student incidents, right? And it's important to review reports 1.21 and 8.1 early. And also added this year, this was the phase 2, I believe, of the LTEL rollout. So we had the initial information that was included, but now there's a filter for LTEL, so you can monitor your LTELs using these reports. Hey, Jan. Oh, sorry. Thought you're adding something. And I actually didn't include it here, but I would point out for the end of the year, report 15.1 and 15.2 also have an LTEL. So this is the dashboard student group that's now more highly visible because they're on the dashboard. So these could be used for monitoring, but also report 15.1, 15.2, which are your cohort outcome data. Those also have those filters. So just be aware of that you might be looking at those. 15.2 is student level data. You may be looking at that to identify, because a lot of times these students were reclassified early on, right? And so you're not even thinking as seniors that they're going to be, that they're LTELs perhaps, but this will tell you if they were reclassified during their period in the cohort. So once they started 9th grade. So be aware that all those reports are now enabled. The other thing came up, this was actually my old CalPADS person when I was at the district, Adriana Quick, who's at the CSIS now, was talking about this at the end of year primer. So there is this, and this was brought up during the CalPADS regional meetings also. So now there's a new mandatory action, right? So all the homeless records need to be closed at the end of each year. So the 24-25 school year records are going to be closed with an end date of June 30th or earlier. And then any that aren't closed will be automatically closed and inserted a June 30th end date. This is important because there's funding based on this, so we want to make sure it's accurate. It should help clean everything up, right, Sean?
This will help clean everything up. However, I just want to note that the auto close for CalPADS, it's a one-time only. And so For this year only, we will go ahead and do that auto close. And then especially for any records that may have not belonged to you that are still sitting open there, we will again do that auto close. However, you should really work with we're really asking that you all complete this, work with your SIS vendors. I know some of them are on the call today. Thank you to you all for being here. I know they have programs in place like their rollovers or their migration from one school year to the next to be able to assist with that and ensure that that's getting in there though.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I failed to mention that. Yes, it's vendor dependent as well, how that process works. The other piece, one that kind of new this year, the attendance recovery, right? So this is that optional TK-12 program, is primarily designed to recoup ADA and reduce chronic absenteeism. The CDE will actually this year generate an alternate chronic absenteeism indicator. So your primary chronic absenteeism indicator on the dashboard will not be affected, but there will be, it's in statute, they have to generate kind of an alternate, which would be any of your ADA or your chronic absenteeism with the attendance recovery data built in as well. So the AR days are reported in the stats file. So students are allowed to bank AR days, right? So if they had 3 absences in the fall, but they could have had up to 5, but they're not. What ultimately is applied is exactly how many student absences there were. You can't basically get extra credit for. It's like my daughters would have loved that. If you had 7 days, that's what they'll apply is the 7 days of your AR days, right? So again, check with your SIS vendor early to ensure that that field is available for extraction. And then this year we have the expanded learning, the LEAP file, right? So this is it's not a school level. This is an LEA level collection, right? So this is for programs like your ELOP or your ACEs, right? So you want to report any student who is signed up for one of those programs, you want to make sure they're in the file. But if the student never attended, you're going to populate that field with 0. And you do have an access role for those folks who handle your expanded learning programs. Anybody who may your after school programs who may need to see that to validate that information for you. Make sure you give them the LEAP view or the edit role for the end of year review. You're going to want to make sure that somebody has a chance to look at that to confirm it's accurate.
Alvin, for that one, for the LEAP file, if you have an admin who is new, they of course have it. However, if you are an admin and you haven't moved those permissions over to yourself, like I found an admin the other day with one of our COEs who had been out on leave for a little while, and so she hadn't yet, caught up to everything yet. And those the LEAP file, it's the edit and the view permissions that you just go in and slide over to yourself. As the LEA admin, you can do that. And then and then you can also, like Evan mentioned, you can assign it the view or edit to anyone else in your org that needs it.
Thanks, Sean.
My pleasure.
All right, special ed data quality. This is always a fun one. I was having at our data governance meeting the other day with CSIS. I was talking to a few of our LEA folks, and we were talking about just the extent. They had a great slide where they showed how much more data had been collected over the course of, I think, 10 years. And you see that just this spike when the special ed data started being directly reported into CALPADS, and just how much more you're reported for. So this year, some data qualities, there's a questionable data flag. So if LEAs that are reporting 0 incidents of restraint or seclusion, if they have more than 100 students with disabilities, are going to be flagged for data quality monitoring. Just an FYI. So you want to make sure your special education staff are taking a look at your report 16.14 to also to track any of those students who are, this is the District of Special Ed Accountability. So They may be at another LEA, so these students you're responsible for them, but they're not enrolled locally. So you make sure you want to have that. And then also make sure you're monitoring the completer data. So report 16.7 and 16.28 early to reconcile those completer and dropout counts for the students with disabilities. So those are kind of key special ed data points that can be pain points. So just to be aware of those. And then the SPED coordination with your non-public schools, right? So LEAs are responsible for reporting incident data for students in non-public schools. And you really need to take the lead in gathering this documentation from your NPS sites now, or your someone within your special education department needs to be taken responsible for that. So it's important to establish communication, have a specific plan in place to monitor restraint and seclusion, make sure it's documented accurately, and then using report 17.4 early. This is for the post-secondary survey for these students. So those students will also be required to fill those out. So make sure you're targeting the outreach for those students who have not filled that out yet, right? So we need all those students. Similar to, it's the same survey that was given at fall 2 for our CTE completers. This is for all your SPED grads as well. All right, moving to end of year 2. This is your, let's see. So this data, just a FYI, so the LEA approval of the certification deadline is it's the August 17th. It is a hard and fast deadline with no amendment window. That is moved up from prior years so we can get the dashboard out. We've talked about this before. This year, the dashboard will be released on October 15th. So it's going to be a tight turnaround for getting the data through. This is a slightly decoupled. So the graduate cutoff is August 15th, as it's been in the past. So any of your summer graduates, any students who are deficient credits, maybe have to take one last class, we're still able to capture those as within your 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate if they're graduated and you have everything uploaded by August 15th. The cohort poll is on August 17th, and that's different than the certification, just FYI. So that's just being pulled out of the online data store. But you do have to have everything in for those late grads by August 15th, as you have for the last couple of years. This includes this EOI2 is the your grades, your course completion data, and your CTE completers, as well as your work-based learning files. We'll talk a little bit about each one of those. So with regards to the CTE completers, and this came up, there's this fatal error 698. And this is any student who's marked as a CTE completer but lacks that matching capstone course record in the SCSC file. I've included the CTE user guide. I've actually been handing this out with we have our Golden State Pathways, we're regional technical assistance for that grant. So I've been making sure that your CTE people have this, and it really gives a pretty robust descriptions of the pathways and then the courses within the various pathways within each one of the industry sectors and how that should be mapped. But hopefully, if you don't have it, you can take a look at it. It'll give you a lot of information that you can share with your curriculum and instruction people, your CTE people, to make sure that the student, when they do become a completer, that they have the appropriate capstone course code attributed, and that there's not a mismatch between the courses they're enrolled in and their completion. And it does happen that we're about to get a bunch of the course completion data from the CDE that we're going to be using for that grant. And I'm curious. I'll certainly be reaching out to help any districts or charters that have some wonky data there. It's a little bit older, some of that data, but anyway, we will be looking at that. But things you need to watch for, just the misordering of the sequence. Of course, students who took the capstone first and then the concentrator course. So, but you do want to capture that in the current academic year. So as soon as they complete it, you capture it, and then it ultimately plays out when they graduate and gets pulled into the college career indicator. Sean, you want to say something?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting this one, Evan. I greatly appreciate it. Also for capstone and I'm sorry, I got to get my C's correctly on this one. For completer and concentrator,
Yeah.
those definitions, which involve your capstone courses. Those definitions have been updated per CTE for CDE, and they are on the CDE website. I will place the link in the chat really quickly. Just being mindful that you're sharing the information with your CTE coordinators of how a capstone and completers are actually calculated. CalPADS does not, we did not have time, nor did vendors have time for that this year, but it will be for your 20, it's effective for your 25-26 school year, but our reporting won't change until your 26-27 school year.
And Sean, that was a change to what qualifies, right? The duration of the class that was related to like the Perkins federal changes at the federal level.
Yeah, so CTE had a finding. A finding is like a federal um, it's like our federal DA kind of almost. And we
Mhm.
were like, oh, okay. And they said that, we couldn't, the CDE, we weren't collecting information as we should. And so our CTE colleagues here went ahead and reversed some items back basically to the federal definition only and not the California state definition for it. And then they posted that new definition on their web pages. And this finding happened quite some time ago, like 2 or 3 years ago. And so the change process just fully was able to get around though.
Thanks, Sean. And I have fielded some questions from CTE people. So maybe if you're the CalPADS person, expect those questions may roll in. But I think that emphasis that it's a
For,
transitional period, right?
yeah, for CalPADS, we'll have full information again for the 26-27 school year. But by the time that our CTE partners provided this information, again, we as CalPADS didn't have enough time to change anything, nor your vendors in their calculations. So yes.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. I know I was kind of like caught off guard there because usually, your CTE people aren't bringing that information to you first. I'm like, how do we not hear about it? It's a data related thing, but yeah, so it kind of.
Yeah. And our college and career director, Mindy Parsons, she did state that, all of many CTE, well, not all of, many CTE users are very much aware of their change. They didn't put out like any public statement or anything about it, but I guess there was some trainings and everything that they had to where CTE users were notified.
Awesome. Thanks. And I've seen a few people come in. Karina, would you mind dropping the links in the chat again? Because we do have, like I said, the CTE user guide is posted and it's linked here as well, but that's a helpful tool. So the work-based learning is another feature that needs to be submitted. I didn't include all the details here. The state board is actually taking up several of the things you've been collecting data on. At the March meeting, the internships, I'm going to totally blank now. Internships, virtual work-based learning, and the enterprise. What is it called, Sean? I'm just blanking out. There's three of the work-based learning measures you've been submitting data for the last 4 years, and the state board is finally going to, it looks like, include them in some capacity in the college career indicator. So all that effort will not be in vain. And how they're going to be incorporated is not 100% clear. They're looking like they're going to be considered like extras. So for students who completed a CTE pathway, they would be the plus that would make a student prepared, which is awesome. So if a student had completed a CTE pathway and they completed one of these work-based learning measures, like say internship, and there are some standards for the internships, like the duration, they need to be aligned with coursework. All those details, I said those will be forthcoming. I wanted to wait until the CDE finally, or sorry, the state board approved them. However, they're supposed to be aligned with curriculum and with industry standards. So that's kind of where they get in. There's some we've been reporting kind of anything goes. And so they had a lot of data that was, well, yes, somebody submitted an internship, but that they didn't have any hours assigned to it or whatever. You will get a lot more specific information, I think, as soon as they're approved. I know that seems a little backwards, but I do think it's nice, and I'm confident actually once they're added that a lot more people will take advantage of them. I just think there's a lot of students who are taking advantage of an internship or some kind of job shadowing that's just affiliated with their CTE pathway, and I think there'll be a lot of folks who will use that, but they're just waiting maybe for a little more detail to know what to include. And this is not your typical, this is not students go out and get something and come back on their own, right? This is something that's organized by the LEA. So it's, for instance, we used to have a program where students took stagecraft and stage technician, and then they were assigned roles within the community, both the school and community production of plays. And then they can, it was monitored, they had an instructor, it was assigned, it was done in conjunction with the course. And so that'll start to count and potentially as a plus. And it may count as a plus for other things as well. So there is some documentation that you need to have for some of those. So like internships I think you get a feedback from the employer, performance evaluation that has to be uploaded as well. But again, I will give more information after the May meeting, because I think that's when this will be taken up, May 11th, I believe.
I believe so. And we, just like you are waiting on SBE, we here at CDE are waiting on the state as well.
I know this one, I feel like it got dragged out. I thought they actually looked like they might not even follow through. I'm like, after all those years of collecting this data, they're not going to do anything with it. But then the state board was like, no, we want to do something with it. And the only holdup at the last meeting seemed to be they thought maybe this should be applicable to more than just CTE pathway completion. Maybe it should be a plus measure for A through G, A through G completion. So all these things that can potentially inform the college and career indicator. I think it's all good. And then this is another piece. This came up actually during the end of year primer. And it's the C- rule, right? So most of the college career indicator measures college credit, CTE capstone, now the AP course completion, which is included last year. That was a huge boon to most of our high school students serving LEAs. They saw this just rapid increase in the college career indicator because they are now including, in addition to the AP exams that a student receives a 3 or higher on, AP course enrollment that received a C- or better, will be included as a positive outcome. So unfortunately, though, you don't see those students. If you're looking at the aggregate reports, that includes any student who is enrolled in the class, not just the students who are successful. So when you're having folks evaluate that coursework for accuracy, make sure you give them the student level reports to make sure they can see the grades and that they can confirm, that the grades are accurate. I did link the dashboard technical guide, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Like most all these, anything that has some kind of coursework in order to be included is going to have to have a C- or better included, or I think a pass also, if it's a pass fail.
Evan, before you move forward, I'm sorry, can you go back to the seclusion and restraint slides? There was a question about it, and it was in the chat, and I was trying to catch up. Sorry.
That's all right. Oh my gosh, for some reason my chat was just like not opening up there.
That's okay, I understand. And so on the seclusion and restraint slides, David had a question about it's dated flagged for data quality monitoring.
Oh yeah, so I think that was a previous one.
That was slide 19, I believe.
Thanks, Karina.
Yeah. I don't see the numbers on my slides. Okay, sorry.
One more. Right there. Nope. Go back. Nope.
Is that it? There we go. Data quality.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's at 0 incidents. So that's an automatic. If you have 100 or more and you have 0 incidents for restraint and seclusion. I guess the question probably is, and I'm still looking for David's question there.
So David, I'm going to take that question question back. I don't have an answer for you, but it's a great question and thank you for it.
Yeah, we'll get back. Yeah, what is that thing? I don't think that does. That's a great question, David.
Mhm.
My sense is that that's not going to be the same as the data quality this year because they haven't changed the data quality definition. I feel like I opened chat and I don't know why it was being suppressed. I wasn't seeing the little pop-ups and I'm like, where did all these questions come from? My apologies. I haven't been responding to any of these. I've just been blown right along. But yeah, let's find out from Brandy what will that will entail. I don't think that maybe the terminology is kind of overlapping with that term data quality that's going to be part of the technical assistance for for LEAs in the future for districts and county offices being identified for the CALPADS technical assistance. But it isn't in place this year. This year, it's still not meeting the deadline. So I don't think that this data quality flag will occur this year. So it's not going to be the same. But I did think I saw the question in there about the certification as well. And that is in place this year. So, the ability to complete the CalPAD submission by the deadline. We have a couple of our LEAs that have met that criteria in the past year. Just usually kind of a one-off thing. Like it was at one point we had a gap in superintendents, is very small districts, so they got picked up. But their participation with the CSIS data governance is kind of the support they're receiving, and I think it's excellent. So it's a good thing, I guess. It's the technical assistance is kind of embrace it, I guess. But hopefully get you everything in on time anyway. Sorry, got off track there. All right, so so we have these other two external data collections that I just wanted to talk about before we kind of wrap this section up, right? So these are also being considered for the ASVAB, so the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. And I don't know if you've ever taken it yourself, but that's like the worst test I ever took for me. It did not serve my strengths. I did not do well on it. And then the State Seal of Civic Engagement. Both of these are under consideration for being included on the College Career Indicator this year. And they are both submitted separately through the EDCS, right? And so the submission window opens on May 5th and closes on August 28th. However, if you have a student who's going to be in the cohort, you definitely would want to have that up prior to the closure of the window, right? So the hot tip, the pro tip is to request the State Seal of Civic Engagement insignias first, and then submit the EDCS after the insignias have been distributed to students. So I think that the reason being that you can actually order more because you're not necessarily sure. So whoever is responsible for your state seal, they may have requested more than than they need, and they haven't aligned them. So wait until you get the final list, the approved list that's been assigned to the students. The insignias attached to the students' diploma. And then you can use that once it's been distributed. You can use that to get your final information. If you want more information about EDCS, I mentioned earlier it was laid out in CalPADS Flash 323. These two are probably going to be taken up. I know for sure they're on the agenda for the state board meeting on May 11th. But again, they're going to be included probably as plus things. I don't think they're going to be standalone. So I think like the State Seal of Civic Engagement would be used as a plus measure for A through G completion. So if you had A through G and you had a state seal, they're not going to be huge game changers. I don't think the total numbers, but they could be, right? I mean, they could apply for those kids for whom these things apply. They could be the thing that pushes them into the prepared category.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Evan, we are still waiting on further information from SBE. We were actually waiting to put out this flash from SBE because we weren't sure which way it was going to go, especially for ASVAB. We knew it was on the calendar. We were like, okay, what's the vote? So yes, but definitely so. We'll receive more information from them. That information will typically go out though from our dashboard teammates and not necessarily CalPads though. So just be cognizant of that.
Thanks, Sean. And I saw another CCI question in the chat from Carrie. Can students that only take a capstone course with average a C minus or better be considered completers? They actually have to, I mean, that probably happens regularly, but and I don't know, is there a validation that doesn't look back a year, but you're kind of on the, if you're certifying a student as a completer, they have to have completed the capstone course in the year, but they wouldn't have completed the pathway if they only took the capstone course. So they would have needed a concentrator and a completer for it to be considered a pathway.
That's correct.
But there isn't a validation, is there, on that to go back?
There's not a validation for us because students can take it across different LEAs. So that's why CalPads cannot place a validation on it, but you still should ensure that your data is being submitted correctly and accurately because for your dashboard, it is viewed.
Yeah, it's really important. Yeah, and that's a great point. It's kind of like the A through G, and that's always why it's tricky. One of the things that CDE was trying to work out was, hey, how do we measure, or is it possible even to measure students who are credit deficient? And it really isn't, because you get data coming in, you have students transferring in, there's transcript analysis to determine how many credits they're worth. It's not all located, and it's the same thing with the CTE pathway completion. Somebody who knows the data has to be able to sign off on it and to make sure that all your CTE completers are captured accurately annually, because you want to capture it the year they complete it and to clean that data up. And actually something came up, Sean, with regards to fall 2 courses. If there's a discrepancy between what was put in fall 2 and then completer data, what ends up happening? That can be reconciled, right, at the end of year.
Say that again. What
if
can be
if you had a class, and like if you had a class, you realized in your fall 2 submission you had a course code that was like inaccurate or wasn't accurate for the course, can you still correct that during end of year? So your course completion data, if you wanted to,
yes, like if you need to correct your enrollment, your SCSE file,
yeah,
and your CRSE file, and then your CRSC file, yes, you can.
you just make it what's right. So that's the piece I was, where we know people have said, oh, we had the wrong course attributed in the fall. Is that, is it going to penalize our students who were in that course, but you can correct it during the end of year?
You can correct it for end of year, but know that what is certified for your fall 2, though, is what is provided to CTC.
Right.
And so if there is a correction there, that's going to
your teacher assignment monitoring.
Yes. So for your TAMO and for your CalSTAS, it's not going to remove it there. But it is still best to go ahead and correct your data, and you especially want to correct it in your SIS system, because you don't want that information. You don't want the older incorrect data to be able to roll over to the next year, and then you still have a recurring problem.
Right. Yeah. So anything that, I know the lagging of the data is always trouble, but yeah, so this is probably going to be a big summer, I think, for a lot of people. With the change to CTE, plus I think there's the dual enrollment or college credit course number that they need to make sure they revise. Any courses that are in that 9227 category need to be fixed. So
yes, definitely so. If they can be changed, if not, please note that course is not retiring from CalPads. It remains an active course. It will. Our goal is to ensure that it remains an active course, because there are many students that will fall into that other category, and that's okay.
yes, and more information coming forward about that. So best practices for monitoring accuracy. I mentioned this earlier, your 15.1 and 15.2. You can actually start looking at that for students. earlier, right? And we're trying to figure out exactly what's the sweet spot for some, you could start to see students having reached a completer status on certain elements earlier rather than later. A through G completion, you won't know until they graduate, right? Same thing with state seal by literacy. Some of these things take all 4 years to play out, but you can use 15.1, 15.2 to monitor annually, just looking for specific things. Just also the data discrepancy dashboard, taking a look at that. And then the split file, I know some of these, some of the LEAs are pretty darn big, especially here. And so using the new split file functionality for those massive course files to avoid the upload failure. So that's a new feature that hopefully is beneficial. I did want to mention, I'm going to toggle over to it. This is just our colleagues at the Shasta County Office of Ed. We go to these periodic county office meetings, and I thought this is pretty cool. I'm always jealous of the people who have the graphic design capacity as well. So I just wanted to share these. I think that these were pretty cool, and I linked them. So they have this one that's an end of year quick bite, and this is something you may want to circulate to folks. So it kind of gives you a quick rundown, and also includes links that you may find, it's best practices, but also links to the CALPADS end of year roadmap, the CALPADS FAQ. So this is stuff that we share also in Canvas, but it's nice because this is a PDF. So you may be able to send it out to your data stewards or your data owners. They also have this, this is their overall table of contents. So they have a bunch of stuff. So you have a knowledge base, you've got CALPADS Fall 1, Fall 2, end of year, ongoing maintenance. So there's all sorts of stuff they put in there in the update. Anyway, I thought it was pretty cool, so I just wanted to share it. When I come across something that looks good, I want to make sure I get it out to you. And especially for the end of year information you could share. Okay, so, and then this was kind of inspired, and like I said, I put our data governance link in the chat. There's one thing specifically for data governance as relates to end of year you make sure you want to have happening, and that's CARS coordination. So the CARS is the basically the submission of the federal funding. It's funny, they said in a presentation recently, oh, this is usually your finance or your fiscal people, and I'm like, oh, I used to have to do this. Like, I think they were just shuffling it off on me. In my last district, I was responsible for the submission in conjunction with my business office. But make sure you know who's submitting that, who's certifying that your school-wide programs in CARS, right? Because it's going to affect your Title I data in the end for your end of year submission. So if you have any targeted assistance schools, and this happened at our district where you had schools that went from being school-wide to targeted assistance, and we didn't make the change in CARS, so it creates a discrepancy there, right? That you need to make sure you have your Title I counts are accurate. So make sure you connect with the folks who are responsible for this, and make sure you forward them the CalPads Flash 320, which has the details. And then just some ongoing supports for your end of year coalition, right? So this is where I think it's really helpful to see the different types of ownership that the data governance, the CSIS data governance went over. But data owners, right? These are the folks who hold the decision-making authority over their program. So like your CTE coordinators, your SPED coordinators, right? So they're the data owners, the data stewards. So those are the program specialists. These are the folks who ensure they can look at the data also and generate accuracy, consistency. And then you, the data custodian, you're like the person at the end of the day who has all the keys on their hip belt, right? I don't know that image, but you do. You manage the technical system, the data uploads, your student information system administrator also would fall into this role. But you want to have this, ensure this culture of data ownership. And like I said, I uploaded the data governance overview. Take a look at it. Some of these principles are excellent, and the biggest thing is you really need to run it up to the people at the top to see how seriously it needs to be taken. There is this data responsibility matrix that they talk about, but you can use the end of year checklist, which I've also uploaded there. CARS certification isn't on there, but that could be included as part of it, for your spring success, like making sure you connect with them. But then when you're talking about, is your CTE person identifying, who's are they looking at the data to verify both the capstone courses and then completer data? Are they looking at course completion data to verify the grades are in and that they're accurate? All your attendance reconciliation, which may include your site level folks or your ELOP, your folks who are doing the after school programs. And just included in I've shared things like this in the past, but you can use the checklist to identify who's responsible, or make up your own and just have like a Google sheet and make sure there's a timeline and a checklist for when they'll check off on things. So just to make sure your data is clean. Just a couple upcoming trainings. Everything now is running through the CSIS training page, but they have an end of year advanced on April 22nd and a year 1 and 2 reporting April 23rd and 28th. They actually have recordings already up on their YouTube channel. The May regional meetings come up May 5th and 6th, so then they'll cover upcoming changes to the 26-27 school year, so probably cover that CTE, change to CTE. And again, all this can be accessed by the CSIS training page. They did note in a recent, I think this might have been in the Q&A, if you want information, use the web form for the fastest results. And so if you leave a phone message at CSIS, they have AI that's like making garbage out of your message. So that's the recommendation. And then if you're not already on the CSIS FICMAT listserv, join. That's where I kind of scroll through pretty periodically to kind of figure out the pain points that I use to kind of drive what I include in this. Just a few next steps. So make sure you get your multi-factor authorization migration by May 1st. I know Leonid's in the room. I'm going to make sure that mine is, that I've transferred mine, Leonid, I promise. Your end of year snapshot window opens May 5th. You've got the regional meetings May 5th and 6th. You make it that deadline for uploading RFEP status for any of your students who are using the 24-25 LPAC results. You make sure you want to have those completed in CALPADS by the 15th, so they won't get pulled into the LP calculation as non-participants. And then your end of year certification 1 on July 17th and end of year 2 on August 17th. Anyway, that is all for me. I would really love it if you could fill out the feedback form for today. We always get some good feedback from you. It's got this link, and there's also linked in the agenda. And maybe Karina, will you drop that in the chat as well? This is technical support, all the links for that. Sean, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, as always, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And, Evan, I did just want to mention, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was clicking away at my camera button. I did want to mention communication. I know Evan shares all of this information with you all in just like a nice, concise manner. So thank you for that. However, being able to give the information back to your necessary colleagues that like it pertains to. For example, okay. I'm like at a loss for words. For example, the nutrition information for
You're too young for a senior moment, Sean. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not. I just dye the grays blonde, okay? I'm like, that's the only way they're gonna go too. So they do. My hair just getting lighter and lighter. But anyway, so I digress. So for the UBA information and Sunbucks, that is absolutely needed for your nutrition directors, but they may not need to know about ASVAB, and that's okay because they're two totally different people. So ensuring the correct information gets back to the correct people at your LEAs is just part of being like the CalPADS admin role, and like delineating it out. Since Evan and Karina, again, just put it on easy slides and everything, honestly, sometimes you can just copy and paste it, give them, some time dates of when, this needs to be handled by, but also, offer for them to be able to, hey, sit down and talk with you if they have additional questions, just because everything can't be covered in, a lengthy email.
Thank you, Sean. And yes, we have the SIS vendor breakout links in there. And Sean, yeah, sorry, Sue Ann, the links to those quick bites, I have them. They're in they're directly linked in the agenda for today in Canvas. Thanks, Karina. All right, everybody. Well, thank you, and we will see you next year. But look for information coming. It's like kind of the year end, but yeah, I see you guys in the chats at the CSIS Q&A. So give me a shout out there. Anyway, thank you, everybody, and we will see you next time.